One of the takeaways that I've had now in this world that we get to have fun playing in is when you get into a company, the business owner typically or the founder, they're wearing all the hats, so they're doing everything, and they stumble on some success, they start hiring some people, and before you know it, they've got a decent sized company. Where I have seen kind of an unlock for companies, it's when they start taking some of those hats off their heads and they start passing those around to others, buying back some of their own time to help grow the company and to be a leader, right?
Welcome to Metcalf Money Moment, the podcast. Unlock financial clarity and confidence with expert insights to achieve your goals. Hosted by Jeb Graham, Ethan Hutchison, and Eric Wymore. Each episode offers decades of combined expertise in wealth management, retirement planning, and more. Join us for practical strategies to inspire your financial journey. Now your hosts.
Welcome to Metcalf Money Moment, the podcast. My name is Jeb Graham, and I'm here with co-hosts Ethan Hutchison and Eric Wymore. And we have a special guest today. His name is Brent Taylor from KC CFO Services. And Brent and I have known each other for a fair amount of time. We used to play golf at the same golf course. And, we moved offices, about 6 months ago? And just so happened that we moved in to an office in the building right next door to Brent. We've kind of reconnected. And so what KC CFO Services does is fractional CFO services to organizations and companies. And Brent, I think, first of all, welcome everybody here. So how's everybody doing today?
Thanks, Jeff. Doing good. Yeah,
nice.
Doing great.
Well, Brent, I think one of the things we talked about maybe to start the podcast is just to talk a little bit about what a fractional CFO is, the industry as a whole and how it's growing and what it is that you guys do for organizations and how you benefit them.
Well, Jeb, thanks for having me on the podcast today. Excited to be here and to chat with you. So the fractional CFO market's been really interesting. So I started my firm about 7 years ago. Before that, I had worked in kind of the corporate world, actually a mix of Big Four accounting and corporate world, and great experiences. But I actually married a small business owner and just kind of saw how different that world is compared to the world that I was in. And I was helping her, I actually helped her buy her business, helped her finance it, set up her infrastructure. And, I just had little light bulbs kind of popping off around my head. Like, that was fun. That was an impact that I really haven't felt in my previous career. So I decided to kind of go off on that. And at the time, I didn't even know what it was called. I was just kind of calling it consulting.
Yep.
It made it really interesting the first couple of years because I almost had to just educate business owners and even partners that this is kind of what we're doing. And I'd say in the past 2 to 3 years, the fractional CFO world has really evolved, and it's been really interesting just to watch now. It's more recognized by business owners and people just in the business community, and just the number of people going in to become fractional CFOs is pretty exciting because, the amount of small and mid-sized companies out there that need help, it's pretty wild. I mean, it is a huge pool, and most of them are out there just trying to, they're grinding, they're working hard, and they didn't realize you could have access to maybe an expert for, a fraction of the price. So it's definitely emerged a lot in the past 2 to 3 years for sure.
Yeah. That makes total sense because you think of like so many small businesses and how much it actually costs to have a full-time CFO. And there's just so many businesses that don't have that type of revenue and aren't set up for that, but they need the service, right? Absolutely. And so if they can do that on a fractional basis, but I think another big point of clarification and differentiation is, from a CFO versus an accountant, right? Like, I think those are kind of like synonymous terms, but you do really very different things. So can you give us maybe the difference there between what you do and what somebody's accountant does?
Absolutely. I think that the highest level I always say is your accountant is looking backwards. It's taking historical information to put together financial statements, and we're looking forward. We're saying, all right, we see where we've been. Maybe we've had some missteps or some things have gone great, but now where are we going forward? So we really focus on kind of the path forward and what does the next 12 to 24 months look like? And do we need to set up financing? Do we need to bring in partners? What kind of hiring are we going to have to do? While the accountant's really kind of focused on, hey, did we account for everything accurately? Do we know how we've done, right? And when we come into a company, the majority of the time a company will have, it's either called an accounting manager or a controller, or sometimes they'll have outsourced their accounting to, a bookkeeper. It just kind of depends on the size of the company. But that is a level that is needed. You have to have your transactions and your financial reporting at least pointed in the right direction to know, where you're trending and maybe where do we need to double down on things or where do we need to kind of back off on things. So, I'd say the biggest thing is your accountants kind of looking backwards. Your CFO should be looking forward.
Hey, Brent, are there certain industries that you're attracted to as far as your job or your work?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's some in my industry that they are going, they're doing a niche, right? I'm focused on this industry and this industry only. I'd say I'm more of a generalist. My company, we've worked anywhere with real estate developers to, a gamut of service-based companies, which is, that's a broad swath of our economy, but not focused on a single industry. What we have found is most businesses at the end of the day are pretty much the same. Money comes in, money goes out. You hope more stays in, and you hope you're smart with that money that does stay in.
Nice.
Definitely. I had I don't know if this is a good question or not, but do you ever work alongside an existing CFO in an organization and come along for project work or anything, or is it really the small businesses, single owners, that sort of deal?
Hey, so great question. So have not worked alongside another CFO, but what we have found is we work alongside, a controller at a company. So it's interesting. When I kind of got into this, I figured, hey, at a certain point in time, the company will outgrow us. They'll bring in a full-time CFO. And I've actually had that, and those are success stories in my mind. We just had one where we took a company from 4 people to 100 people over 3.5 years, and they were at the point where they needed a full-time CFO. So that was, in my mind, a success story. But what I've also found over the past 7 years is, as a company's growing, and that's really the companies that make the most sense for us to work with because they're the ones bumping into complexities and they need that help. They need a full-time control. They need a really strong controller just to make sure all the ins and the outs and all the controls and everything are working properly. And we can come alongside that controller in that fractional CFO seat and be with them for quite a while. And I don't know if that 100-person threshold, that was just kind of interesting. I just saw this company at 100 people was where it was made sense for them to kind of make the leap. But
that's
up to this point,
a lot of growth in 3 years. That's pretty impressive story, really.
Yeah, that was a interesting journey. And when you're growing that fast, it's also expensive. So just figuring out how you finance that and everything was it was fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I will. So like for us, obviously in our client base, we have a lot of small business owners. I'm sure some of them could probably use fractional CFO services. Like I don't know if we want to call it success stories, but like, what do you think? Like when you come into a company, what are the first things that you're talking to? And I know that's probably unique to each individual organization, but what are the first kind of things you're talking to them about, and what are the common things that you're really helping them out with?
I guess one of the takeaways that I've had now, kind of in this world that we get to have fun playing in, is when you get into a company, the business owner typically, or the founder, they're wearing all the hats, so they're doing everything, and they stumble on some success, they start hiring some people, and before you know it, they've got a decent sized company. Where I have seen kind of an unlock for companies, it's when they start taking some of those hats off their head, so they're wearing all the hats, and they start passing those around to others and buying back some of their own time to help grow the company and to be a leader, right? So sometimes I'll get in there and I'll just kind of understand, like, what's the history? What's your leadership team? Do you have a leadership team? What are your goals? And a lot of times it's interesting. Business owners haven't even really thought about what are their goals. Like they're just grinding so hard and working so many hours that they're just like, my goal is to make it to the end of the year and hopefully there's some money in the bank. Right. So sometimes it's kind of understanding, like, well, let's start setting up, some things around you to set you up for success and get some things off your plate, to help continue to grow the company. It's really interesting too. Like, I think once a business owner sees, hey, if I take some of these things off my plate and bring in smart people around me, like, hey, my business can grow, my life can get better. I mean, it's been fascinating to see how many business owners don't even have a financial advisor. and or maybe a great tax CPA. And it's like, hey, let's bring in the right advisors around you to, hopefully take some of the money that you're making and do some smart things with it and do things like succession planning. Very few business owners are doing succession planning because they're just grinding. So sometimes it's just kind of getting them to take a deep breath and to work on the business and not just in the business. And that's kind of a weird thing that I've found. It's almost like you're a little bit of a business coach, but you almost have to be to make sure that we're making good financial decisions on the journey.
Yep. Well, very good. I know that's a, like when you're talking about financial, some of them don't have a financial advisor. All of them probably have a CPA, right? But all of them have an insurance guy and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, just like we have numerous different clients, from corporate executives to, young people that are high earners. But I've always said that one of my favorite types of clients to work with is the small business owner. And the reason is because there's so many ways that you can help them, from, to your point on succession planning. Well, when they do a succession plan, they need to fund that either key man insurance or buy-sell agreement. They need to put together a 401k plan, and maybe we can work with their accountant and figure out ways to save them massive amount of dollars on taxes by setting up a safe harbor 401k plan. But that for us, it's kind of becoming a niche business, with a lot of small business owners. And I think working with people like you, for us, is a good thing to have, or you're a good thing to have in our back pocket when we're talking to our clients, just because, obviously our goal is for our clients to be able to grow their business. And I think having a CFO is probably a humongous step in that right direction to do that. So,
and I think what we have, and that's not what I think, what we've seen is you get to play quarterback a little bit for the business owner. So you get to come in there, you get to kind of unpeel everything. You get to see what's going on, where things are good, where there's some things that need to be better, and maybe where there's an opportunity to bring in somebody like you, Jeb, to say, okay, hey, you haven't been saving for retirement. You're paying a bunch of money in taxes. Like, hey, there's some tools out there that, you can save on taxes, but set aside money, but also to reward your employees and bring some benefits in that, will help you recruit better people and get them to stay there as well. So it's almost playing quarterback at times to see where are they and where could things get better, and then let's bring in the right people to join this journey.
Yeah. Cool. Nice. Well, so can you tell us, Brent, a little bit about, so we've talked about the industry as a whole, and maybe your company, KC CFO Services. How many CFOs you guys have? I know you said you don't necessarily have an industry, but what is like an ideal client for you guys as far as company size and who you can help the most?
Absolutely. So when I started this journey, I figured I would just be kind of solo guy, Brent, out there trying to help companies. And a few years have passed, and now there's a total of 4 of us. So I'm surrounded by a number of strong women on my team, and they help me and our clients every day. So that's been fun. So yeah, our ideal client, it's companies that are growing. There's an awful lot of, I guess I would call them lifestyle businesses, and those are great businesses, right? That's somebody that stumbled upon a service or a product, and they've maybe got a small team, and they're generating enough cash that they're kind of happy with what's happening there. A lot of times those companies don't really need a fractional CFO. They probably need a financial advisor. They need to get a tax CPA. The companies that we work with, they're growing, they're bumping into complexities. And my experience has been, once you start hitting about 10 people, those complexities start, right? And that 10 to call it 100-person company that's growing and that's trying to figure out, should we go to this other location? How are we financing our growth? Those are the companies that make a ton of sense for us to come in and get to work with.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes total sense. Well, is there anything else, Brent, or Ethan or Eric, or Brent, that you think would be a road we can take you down here that one of us could ask a question that you think would be beneficial?
I guess, maybe to flip the question on to you guys, are there things that you've noticed with your business owner clients, in the past year or two that you're kind of like, yeah, these are successful things for them to do or services to bring in? Is there anything that's just, I guess, shining out to you guys?
I can think of 5 right now that probably need to talk to you. So
Yeah.
I would say, this has been educational from my perspective, just to understand kind of who you're looking to work with and that ideal, not necessarily looking at minimum revenue requirements or anything like that. But hey, companies that are willing to grow, growing, and wanting to grow, which I think pretty much encompasses all businesses for the most part, should have some sort of conversation with you or a team like yours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could you share a little bit of what the process would be if they want to engage?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would come sit down with them and just kind of understand, like, hey, we'd have a discovery call. So, hey, what's going on? Tell me about your business. Tell me about your needs. Where are some of your challenges? Where are some of your opportunities? And we would kind of really use that as an opportunity to figure out, is it, could we be of value and service to that business? And if we both decided that, hey, this made a lot of sense, then figure out kind of our cadence. We have companies that we work with. I mean, maybe a little bit smaller client. We might sit down with them once a month and take a deep dive. Let's look at what happened last month, and then let's spend the rest of the call kind of looking forward and figuring out, like, are we trending towards our goals? We have some other clients that, we're working on a weekly basis. There's just enough going on that we have to, have that cadence. So it's a little bit tailored towards the company and the season they're in. So it's not kind of a one size fits all. It is really what's going to help serve that company during their growth.
Yep. And I go back to the question you asked us a minute ago about, like, things that we're seeing with business owners, like our business owner clients. I think a big piece of it, and you hit on it earlier, is just the estate planning piece of whether it's estate planning or succession planning in a business. I feel like that's always the last thing that people think about, right? And there's, the chances of a business owner keeling over and dying, it probably doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen. And I think, like, trying to get people to put that in as a priority in their business becomes difficult, right? Because you're talking about everything else in the business, and the very last thing they're going to think about is, well, what happens if I'm not here to run the business? Or what happens if Johnny, my best salesperson, all of a sudden takes a job somewhere else and we're missing a bunch of revenue? How do I insure for that risk? Or takes a job somewhere else or dies, right? That's one of them. And then I think it's also the balance. When we're working with small business owners, say they put together a 401k retirement plan, or they're putting together a simple IRA, but let's just say it's a safe harbor 401k plan. A lot of them are grapple with how much to put into that plan to shelter money and taxes, and how much should they be reinvesting in the business for certain growth initiatives? Or do I want a profit share to my employees, and how much is that going to cost me? And what's the offset? Like, what am I saving in taxes if I make this big profit sharing contribution, and what value does that really have to me as the business owner as well as the employees? And I think kind of trying to talk them through those balances, or those types of things in retirement plans, are things that we're talking to them a lot about. And there's no kind of right answer, I don't think. Like, I've got one decent sized 401k that I can think of right now that every year talks about doing a profit sharing plan. They kind of do the analysis, or doing the profit sharing aspect of their plan. They do the analysis and they end up not doing it. And so now we're kind of looking at, well, what are some other solutions for that business owner? Because he wants to put more money away for himself, but he doesn't necessarily want to have to be on the hook for this big profit sharing contribution to his employees. So those balances and kind of figuring out how to solve that problem is something that we run into a lot, I think.
Yeah, both of those topics, I'd say in the past couple of years I'm seeing a lot, and that's why there's so much synergy, I believe, between the fractional CFO and the financial advisor for that business owner. It's succession planning, and it is this balance, because it's the balance of, what do I leave in the company? What do I take out? What do I, reward our employees with? So those are two big topics, and I've really seen those pop up. So again, that's why I've seen so much synergy between fractional CFOs and financial advisors, good ones that want to think about those things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would imagine as well, as if they're getting closer and closer to wanting to liquidate their business or sell their business, they want that numbers to be propped up a bit as much as they can.
And I will say that is for us something that we've dealt with over the past few years. Several different clients that have sold businesses, and like kind of gone down that road, and we're not set up or capable of doing the actual consultation. Like, I guess we know enough to be dangerous, right? When it comes to, like, we understand the transaction, and we understand that once the transaction happens, that's good for the client, that's good for us as their financial advisor. But when it really comes to, like, what's this business worth? What's going on in that industry? That's really not what we're set up for. And that's obviously among your expertise. Have you been a part of any exits?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, actually. So we've had multiple companies that have been acquired over the years. Again, that's another success story for us, right? You've built something that somebody else is willing to pay money for. I have numerous clients right now that a transition selling is just always kind of on top of mind, right? I mean, a few of these companies, and this probably should be everybody. When you're building something, you should have an exit in mind because that's going to help you build a great company. But a lot of companies are, hey, I'm focused on how am I ensuring that my profitability levels match up with what I would maybe want to get someday for my company. And so we'll analyze that at times. Like, what if you were to sell your company, what do you want? And then we'll kind of re-engineer that to say, well, right now, based on what you're doing and multiples, you're not there. But over the next 2 years, let's make a really heavy focus on these different areas to get that EBITDA where it needs to be to potentially sell at a level that you'd be willing to sell it. So we have a lot of those discussions at times, and we're analyzing it like, where are we at today? Where do you want to be? And what needs to happen between that gap if you do want to sell your business?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But those are probably interesting conversations too. And that's like the ultimate, that's your ultimate, hooray moment, right? When you coach someone up and then that transaction happens, and that's what every business owner kind of dreams of, right? Is that glorious exit. And then you also realize that it's not always and we've talked about this on the podcast before, it's not always like you sell the business, you get the cash and you put your arms up. Usually there's a process, right? And it's an earn out and it takes a while, but it's kind of every business owner's dream. And so that's cool that you get to work that closely with it for sure.
Well, it's fun to see because you watch these business owners and it's a grind, and you've seen them pour their heart and soul into this business and to support their employees. So when you get to see these moments where, hey, they got to sell, it's exciting. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been super productive, and I really think that people will get value out of this, and we thank you for coming on, Brent.
Yeah. Jeb, Ethan, Eric, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome today.
Yes,
Excellent.
We'll have to do it again sometime, and maybe it'll be when we're working together on one of our clients one of these days here soon. So
there we go. We can have a case study on the successful
we can do a case study.
Yep. There we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and this is Metcalf Money Moment, the podcast, signing off.
Thanks for tuning in to Metcalf Money Moment, the podcast. We hope today's episode provided valuable insights to help you unlock financial clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. For more expert advice and resources, visit metcalfpartners.com. Until next time, make every money moment count.
Jeb Graham, Ethan Hutchison, and Eric Wymore are registered representatives with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through WCG Wealth Advisors, a registered investment advisor. WCG Wealth Advisors and Metcalf Partners Wealth Management are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.